Good stuff, huh? You're a quiet group. You're all packed in the back there. Why don't you guys come on down front, somebody? Who's going to be brave? No, I'm just kidding. Stay there, stay there. Well, good morning. My name is Corey. I'm one of the pastors here. I want to welcome you. Good to have you with us. Everybody have a good new year? 2015. Can you believe it? Where's your hover car? Yeah. Yeah. Who's Back to the Future fans, right? This was the year for Back to the Future Part 2. Yeah. No hover cars or no hoverboards, no flying cars. Although Roy told me in the first service there's prototypes out there for them, but they're far from being mass produced like in that movie. No clothes that, like, remember his arms would sucked up on his jacket and his shoes tied themselves, none of that. So it's funny, interesting, those futuristic shows frequently get it wrong, and how fast we're going to progress. So I guess we're optimistic as humans, that we're going to have something bigger and better coming up. Well, we are in Acts 23. So if you have a Bible, you can turn there, and we'll jump in that in a second. If you missed last week, I really want to encourage you. You can go on our website to woolacares.com or .org. Woolacare is all one word. And listen to last Sunday's message. Pastor Ken preached one, knocked it out of the park. So I encourage you to do that and check that out. And the big idea from last week was, are you willing to admit wrong, learn, and change? Are you willing to admit wrong, learn, and change? And as we read Acts, I want to encourage you that it is the story of the early church. There are 28 chapters, but with chapter 28, the church didn't end. It just continued. We have, all the way up to this present day, we are a part of that continuing story. From the early church that basically became the majority faith in a little over 200 years in the Roman world, all the way to now. That when Jesus looks down on us, he doesn't see Word of Life, he doesn't see the Catholic Church, he doesn't see the Presbyterian Church, he doesn't see the church in the Middle Ages or the church in the modern age. He sees just one large family. That's really what we are. We are one large family. The denominations today, everybody that calls on Jesus, past, present, and future, is part of that story that Acts starts off talking about. So I really encourage you to see yourself there, that you are and can be an agent for Jesus' kingdom, an agent in this world for good, an agent in this world to make it a better place. And that with Jesus, it is possible. Paul, and then we're jumping into chapter 23, just a little backstory on this. He is in custody now. He's gone to Jerusalem, and he's on mission, and he's determined to go up to Jerusalem. And so he goes up there, and he gets involved, gets caught, and then a riot happens, and so the Roman soldiers come in and grab him, and they're about ready to beat the snot out of him to find out why he's been, in custody, or why he's caused the riot, and what he did wrong, basically. And so it's interesting because then Paul answered, backing up actually in verse 29 of 22, Paul answered, he says, I am a citizen by birth. The soldiers who were about to interrogate Paul quickly withdrew when they heard that he was a Roman citizen, and the commander was frightened because he had ordered him bound and whipped. And this is just an interesting side note that Roman citizenship carried weight in the Roman Empire. And when the soldier found out that he was a Roman citizen, you were not supposed to beat them without due cause, without court, basically. That was punishment, and you couldn't punish someone unless they'd gone through court and been proven guilty. So their idea, I'll tell you, a Roman's idea of interrogation would make waterboarding look like, a vacation in a spa or something, They were brutal. So that'll play on into 23 as we move on into that. Okay, 23, verse 1. Gazing intently at the high council, Paul began, Brothers, I have always lived before God with a clear conscience. Instantly, Ananias, the high priest, commanded those close to Paul to slap him on the mouth. But Paul said to him, God will slap you, you corrupt hypocrite. What kind of judge? Yeah, he was pretty direct, wasn't he? What kind of judge are you to break the law yourself by ordering me struck like that? Those standing near Paul said to him, do you dare insult God's high priest? I'm sorry, brothers. I did not realize he was the high priest, Paul replied. For the scriptures say, you must not speak evil of any of your rulers. And I want to stop and just bring a clarification to that. In the New Testament, the Bible's divided into an Old and New Testament. And the Old Testament is basically the story of Israel, God interacting with Israel to try to make his people, make them his people. It's arguably a failed project by God because they completely fail him. But they had they had a very structured religious system with high priests that had real authority. Very much like some of the Muslim countries modern day are trying to institute Sharia law, if you've heard of that, where religious law held sway over actually public law as well. And that's really what it was like in Israel. The religious law was in authority over all the public and all the doings of the people. And so the high priest really had an official authoritative position. In the New Testament now, Jesus is our high priest. Okay, it's only Jesus is the high priest. And pastors are not high priests. Okay, we're not the authoritarian rulers that the Old Testament structured Jewish worship had. And that's just and you see that in some churches where you have a very structured environment, very authoritarian, and I don't believe you'll find that anywhere in the New Testament. In fact, the New Testament refers to all believers as priests, that we are all priests, that we all have a part to play in the church and in God's kingdom. Moving on. Paul realized, verse 6 here, Paul realized that some members of the high council were Sadducees, and some were Pharisees. So he shouted, brothers, I am a Pharisee, as were my ancestors, and I am on trial because my hope is in the resurrection of the dead. This divided the council, the Pharisees against the Sadducees. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection or angels or spirits, but the Pharisees believe in all of these. So the Sadducees did not believe in resurrection. They didn't believe in life after death. They didn't believe in angels or spirits or the spirit world or anything. And they just believed once they died, you just went into the dirt and you were done. That's why the Sadducees were so sad, you see. Thank you for that courtesy laugh. I've been waiting for years to use that joke. Years ago, I heard this. I don't remember her name. She was an older black lady, a preacher. And she could preach. And she said that all the time. I guess I can't remember her name, but she always used that joke and always got a laugh. But anyway, so the Sadducees didn't believe anything, so they were very sad, you see. So there was a great uproar. Some of the teachers of religious law who were Pharisees jumped up and began to argue forcefully. We see nothing wrong with him, they shouted. Perhaps a spirit or an angel spoke to him. As the conflict grew more violent, the commander was afraid they would tear Paul apart. So he ordered his soldiers to go and rescue him by force and take him back to the fortress. That night, the Lord appeared to Paul and said, "Be encouraged, Paul, just as you have been a witness to me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome as well." And I'll stop there. The story goes on. There's a plot to kill Saul. His nephew finds out about it, warns the soldiers. The soldiers take him then to under guard to another Roman city called Caesarea, and there he goes then on trial by one of the rulers, and actually spends over several years then in locked guard after this scene. So you see here that Paul even though he knew, and there are, reading back in Acts, if you read back, you'll see where he is being warned by the Spirit not to go to Jerusalem. But he is determined to fulfill what he believes is a call in his life. And so he's not letting anything stop him, even though their threats of imprisonment and death await him. And ultimately, Paul eventually ends up in Rome years later, and we assume, we don't know for sure, it doesn't say, but that he was eventually probably fed to lions. So he died a violent martyr's death for his faith. So this morning, there's three things I want to pull from this text. Three things that will make 2015 your best year ever. And basically, I want to pull back to the 30,000 foot level and kind of examine Paul's actions and life and apply it then to us. And my big idea here is that living for Jesus will make your life better. Living for Jesus will make your life better. And living for Jesus will make you better at life. In 2015, if you say, you know what, I'm going to spend 2015 living for Jesus, he will make your life better. And he'll make you better at life. So 3 things that I want to look at. The first one is to face your fears. To face your fears. Paul, knowing what was in front of him, still went head on to Jerusalem. Knowing that everything that likely happened would happen, he still felt that was his path to fulfilling the call in his life. That he was afraid. He had fears. He did not let them stop him. And it says here, verse 11, it says, that night the Lord appeared to Paul and said, be encouraged, Paul. Now, why did Jesus say, Paul, be encouraged? Because he was discouraged. He was human. He got discouraged. Jesus said, be encouraged, Paul. Just as you've been a witness to me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome as well. You see, folks, God is faithful even when we are not. God is faithful even when we are not. And God is faithful even when we can't see it. He is faithful. In 2015, will you face your fears? Will you face your fears? You see, most of the time, Paul, this scene here where Jesus appears to Paul and tells him to be encouraged, he has a plan for him. But this is very rare. Only one other time in Paul's life that we know of that's recorded did this happen. The rest of the time, Paul was just making plans and kind of going the direction he knew what to do. And so in this, it takes facing fears. Who here has been, we could say, at some point in your life, you've been kind of immobilized by a fear or some worry? Yeah, most of us, yeah. By all of us. We've all been immobilized, all been frozen by fear. I want you to take a minute and just think about what maybe are you facing right now, or what fears, what insecurities, what uncertainties, worries, if you will, are going on in your life right now. Just take a second and think about that. What is out there that is worrying you, causing you fear? When I was thinking about this for my own life, it's like a lot of times fear, worries, uncertainty can be overwhelming. They can be overwhelming, and to the point to where you go after them and you fail and you just quit. And I was thinking about Ichiro Suzuki. Who knows Ichiro? Baseball player, Mariner. He was a Mariner for 10 years. I'm from Washington, so I was a big Ichiro fan. And I was always impressed by Ichiro because the one thing he did is when he stepped up to the plate, he never went for a home run. He always went for the base hit. His goal was to get on base. And consequently, he ran 10 years in a row getting over 200 hits a year. Now, for you non-baseball nerds, that's a big deal. Okay, to hit 200 hits a year for 10 years in a row, it's a major league record. But he didn't go up to try to hit the home run. And it's the same thing with our fears. Let's just try to get on base this year. Let's just try to face them one at a time and take small little chunks out of them. Let's take baby steps in our fears. Let's just try to get on base. Don't try to be knocking it over the fence and blowing your shoulder, right? Or whatever it is you do when you get over 40, all right? But let's face our fears. For me, big fears around ministry, frankly. In 2001, I had just finished up going to school for ministry. I had originally went to college to be a teacher and decided I hated kids, so that, just kidding. But when you get a bunch of them together in a classroom, right, it's like, well, anyway. They didn't tell me about that, that I have to face these kids every day. Anyway, so I was finishing up my ministry credentials, and we were pursuing missions. And I went, we were living in Oregon at the time with Ken and Bobby. We went to the same church there. That's where we met. And so we went up to Washington to visit my family, Kristen's dad, my father-in-law, Dwayne. He's been here several times. You guys probably, if you've been around, met him. They pastored a church up there. And so we were up there visiting him, and I went downstairs, and I don't even know what I was doing. I was wandering around, skipping services, I guess. And I was wandering around, I went down the hallway, and an earthquake shook the hall. I mean, where I did this, and I had to put my hand against the hall, and I'm freaking out. And the big children's church classroom was right here with 30, 40 kids in it. And I'm so as soon as it stops, I run down and I look in the window, and they're not acting like anything. And it was just it was one of those things where it was just how come they're not freaking out like I'm freaking out? And so as I turned back down the hall, went down the hall, it happened again. And I put my hand on the wall, and I felt like the Lord said, I want you here. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, I get, that it's this is in my head. But the God said, I want you here. And I'm well, I'm pursuing missions. I don't want to be a pastor. And my wife definitely doesn't want to be a pastor's wife. She already warned me about that when we got married. And so she was a pastor's kid. And her parents, she grew up in small churches where they eat pastors for lunch. And sadly, she saw her parents get kicked in the teeth a lot growing up, and she wanted no part of it. And I didn't blame her. Who would want any part of that? Sorry. Here you are. Anyway, and so to this day, it's been the most physical, it wasn't audible. I can't say it was audible voice, but it was certainly the most physical action God's ever geared towards me. So we went back home, back to Oregon, and I told her, and I was what do we do? And I don't know. Let's just pray about it and keep it to ourselves. And about a month later, my father-in-law called me and said, hey, I got this new youth pastor, and I know you're trying to pursue missions, but I could really use help. Could you come up and go on staff with me and help me? And I was just wow. So we did. We went up there, and of course, nothing's ever easy. So much so that in the middle of that time, that youth pastor left. His old youth pastor came back as an associate pastor, and so then I ended up having to be part-time and getting a job in a grocery store to supplement my income. And it went along for about 3 years, and things went good. We were growing. It was going great. And then my father-in-law, it was time he wanted to retire, and I was super excited. This other associate and I, we were best friends, and so I was really fired up because he was a cool guy. And so my father-in-law was getting ready to retire and do a transition, and I went through that, and it was just it was awesome, this awesome time in my life. And we were on our 15th, it was our 15th anniversary, and so we went away for our 15th anniversary, and I just had a talk with this guy, and he's I'm so excited with what God's going to do, and it's just going to be great. And I came back from my 15th anniversary. We had missed a board meeting, and I had been fired. And I was just talk about a punch in the gut. And the story's long and involved. It involves betrayal and backroom deals and all the ugly stuff you hear about happening in churches. It's true, okay? Just going to tell you, it happens. There are people. If unfortunately, it's people in them. And so I started getting calls from members in the church. Like my phone was ringing off the hook. What's going on? What's going on? What's happening? What's going on? And I'm like, and I realized at that point, I was like, I could split this church right down the middle. I was just like, I can't do that. I can't let my selfishness, my hurt, destroy a church. Too many times I have seen, and you probably have too, selfish, hurt, arrogant leaders ruining churches, splitting them. And I was just like, I can be no part of this. So I just kept my mouth shut and just bowed out. And I went back into the grocery business full time. I had a degree in stacking apples. And it takes 4 years. It's very difficult. And oh man, I hurt it was 3 years. Finally, a buddy of mine there was a church planter, got a hold of me and said, I need some help, come help me. I was like, I don't want to. He's like, well, I can't really pay you anyway, so it'd be volunteer, so if you get fired, you wouldn't lose. Okay, I'll come. So I went and worked with him and kind of slowly started getting healed up. But I wanted nothing to do with ministry. We tried to sell our home in the peak of the financial height where they were doing bidding wars on homes up there. We had tried to sell our home. I tried to move to Texas and go to get my master's and just become a history teacher and just forget ministry and church altogether. But 5 full-price offers fell through in a year. And it was just like God wasn't having it. So took a home off the market, licking our wounds. And it was tough. But you know what? Looking back, I wouldn't change a single thing that happened. Because I had a lot of pride, and there was a lot I had to play in that situation, folks. And it wasn't all... it's never all one side. It's never all one side. And the Lord used that, because right after that, 6 months after that, I went into a church co-pastor, the senior pastor at a church plant. This guy had like $1 million from anyway, long story, but that was another complete disaster. It blew up in my face in 6 months. I left that, and it was just like, but I was just hurt and wounded and just in rough shape. But you know what? Slowly, God used it. Revealed to me where I was wrong and where I was prideful. And it was the best, frankly, I would not change it. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Was it fun? No. Did it hurt? Yes. Do I still have fears? Here's a prime example of the fears that I faced. When Ken called me up, said, hey, come on down, check it out, need some help. It's 3 years now, we've been here a little over 3 years. So we came down, loved it, of course, came. About a year into it, the first board meeting that I was going to be gone on vacation. You talk about fear. Blind, like out of nowhere, fear hit me. This is 7 years, this was 7, 8, this is 11 years ago now. But that's what fear does. That's what hurt does. It can just freeze us up. And I was honest with him. I said, I got to share this with you. And he's like, wow. You are messed up, aren't you? He didn't say that. But we can't let fear stop us. God has a call on your life. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's to start a business this year. Maybe it's to start a ministry. Maybe it's to be a better father, a better husband, a better wife, a better mother. Maybe it's to humble yourself and just work your boring, frustrating job to the best of your ability. I don't know what it is, but He has a plan and a call for your life. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let fear stop you in 2015. The second thing to make 2015 your best year ever is make a plan. Make a plan. Paul had a plan. He was headed for Jerusalem. You read back in Acts, and the Holy Spirit was warning him in city after city, hey, you know what? It's not a good idea to go there. But he's like, I've got a plan. And there's this interesting relationship you see here in Acts between the guiding of the Holy Spirit and Paul, what he feels his call and plan is. And so he's going for it. He has a plan. And he set on that course and never looked back. And consequently, he led And it was responsible for the majority of the non-Jewish Roman world coming to faith in Jesus. Now maybe you're not called to be a Paul, but you have a calling. As New Testament believers, we all, if you call on Jesus as Lord, you are one of his priests in his kingdom. And he has a call and plan on your life. What is it? You see, humility and planning are not mutually exclusive. It's okay to make a plan. It doesn't mean if you've been around church, especially Pentecostal churches, there's just some weird traditional idea that it's like bad to like have a plan. And I don't know if that's your experience or not, but it's okay to have a plan. It's a good thing to have a plan. It's critical to have a plan. Any of you that have ever done anything, whether it's eat right, lose weight, succeed at a business or your career, or go to school, or anything, even to corral your little snot lockers if you got kids at home running around, your ankle biters, running around, you got to have a plan. They'll eat you alive, won't they? So that's one thing I learned when I was substitute teaching. Man, if I didn't have a plan, I was done for. I mean, they were just going to and just leave you for dead in the dust. So you got to have a plan. It's amazing to me how many people don't even know what they're doing this afternoon, let alone next year. It's like, get a plan. God wants you to have a plan for your life. It's okay. It's important. It's critical to have a plan. Jesus says, don't worry about the future. And it's right. Worrying and having a plan are different things. Worry is that fear that stops us from enacting on plans. And as a Pentecostal church, we embrace and want the guiding and directing of the Holy Spirit in our life. But that doesn't mean we can't have a plan. We see in Paul's life, most of his journeys and travels were just his own plan because he had a call. He had a base call. If you're in here and you're a father, you don't need to hear from God to be a good father. You got a plan, buddy. Be a good father. Right? You don't need audible voice from God that says be good for your kid, good to your kids, provide for them, love them, hug them, beat them every once in a while. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that anymore. It's a shame too. But but you're right. You see what I'm saying? Have a plan. James 4, chapter 4, 13 through 15, it says, in caution to our plans, basically include God in your plans. Be like, God, okay, I've got this kid, so that means I'm a father. Help me to be the best father I can be. Or James says, talking about business, hey, you who go here and go there and going to plan this and do that, and you have no idea. Your life's a breath. It's short. It's true. So include God. Doesn't mean don't have a plan, but don't get arrogant about it. Don't have that plan and run over everybody in your life to accomplish it. Don't leave a wake of dead bodies, on your corporate, whatever climb or journey you're on in your path. Have a plan, but have it be included, God included. And number 3, Paul says right in the first verse of chapter 23, it got him slapped actually. It says, gazing intently at the high council, Paul began, brothers, I've always lived before God with a clear conscience. I've always lived before God with a clear conscience. So what's that look like? For starters, living for Jesus doesn't mean never making mistakes. It doesn't mean we never make mistakes. But it means owning them and moving forward. Owning them and moving forward. Oswald Chambers, great 1900s theologian, Bible teacher, scholar, has this quote. It says, leave the broken, irreversible past in God's hands and step out into the invincible future with Him. Leave the broken, irreversible past in God's hands and step out into the invincible future with him. See, if it's in the past, you can't change it. And you don't know the future, so you can't change it. You have now. And see, failing, and this is where I see so many people, especially newer Christians, people engaging faith, is the sense that when they fail, when they fall down or make a mistake, that's failing. And I want to clear your thinking if that's you. That's not failing. We will make mistakes. We will fall down. Failing is not getting back up. Failing is not getting back up. Everybody makes mistakes. Paul, here, you see this clearly in verse 5. He says, "I'm sorry, brothers, I did not realize he was the high priest." Paul replied, "The scriptures say you must not speak evil of any of your rulers." Paul owned his mistake as soon as he was made aware of it. And that's all God asks us to do, to live with a clear conscience. Doesn't mean to live in perfection, because we will never do that. One of our mottos here is no perfect people allowed, because there's no such thing. In fact, if you're a perfect person, you can just get out, because you'll mess us up. All right? Nobody leaving? Okay, we're good. So I just want to encourage you, because I see people time and time again, when they fall, they stay there and they wallow in the mud for days, weeks, and months. If you struggle with addiction or alcoholism or lying or outbursts of anger, own it. Fall down, get up, humble yourself. Ask God to forgive you and ask the person you hurt to forgive you and move forward. Quit staying down. That's failure. Get up. Get up. Get up when you make mistakes. See, humility, it takes humility to quickly own our mistakes. And something, frankly, most of us greatly lacking. It takes humility to say, I blew it. Forgive me. I'm sorry. You see, humility is not thinking less of yourself. There's this wrong idea about humility. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's thinking of yourself less and thinking of others more. Humility helps you say, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. I spent 20 years, and I kid you not, we've been married 26 years. It's been about 6 years. I spent 20 years trying to figure out how to budget financially in my home. I came from a family, like I said, before I've said it before, my stepdad was a log truck driver, and he wasn't very bright. And so my mom ran the finances, and their idea of budgeting was write checks till the checkbook was empty. Well, that doesn't work so good, and because they start bouncing, and then it was just all kinds of bad. So I grew up with absolutely zero financial planning or any understanding of budgeting whatsoever. But as we got into our marriage, and I was like, oh, I had more money than month, or more month than money, and bad money management. It's like bounce some checks, and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Kid you, it took me 20 years. And I don't know if you go, well, that guy's really thick-headed. Maybe I am. But here's what it was. I had a lot of fears and insecurities around finances. And so I was locked. We both did. We both kind of came from just not really any financial, not very much money, and then not very good at handling it. And that's a bad combination. It's a really bad combination. And so it took me 20 years, but by the grace of God, and I guess just enough positive stubbornness, I kept at it. I kept at it. Humility allows you to do that. Allows you to say, get up when you fall down. Swallow your pride and get back up. Make a plan in 2015 and go for it like Paul did. Face your fears in 2015.